solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you.
All right. The witness has been sworn at this time. What is this witness subject to the exclusionary order?
Your Honor, I guess there'd be an argument that she is not. Having said that, I don't believe she's watched any trial testimony from this trial.
Okay. And again, that's sometimes not all that easy to figure out who or would or wouldn't be subject to it, but I will inquire. Have you been watching any of the trial testimony since this case began?
No, sir.
You haven't viewed it on the online feed or in the courtroom at all?
No.
Have you talked to anybody else about their testimony?
No.
Okay, then Mr. Wood, you can inquire on direct. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell it for the record?
Yes, Tara Martinez, Martinez,
And how are you employed?
with Idaho State Police Forensic Services,
What is your title there?
Forensic Scientist 2.
And what does forensic scientist 2 do?
It depends what section of the laboratory you're in. So I'm in the latent print section. So that means that I process items of evidence to try to find fingerprints, and then I may compare those prints and may run them through a database. And then I also respond to crime scenes.
And how long have you been with the Idaho State Lab?
8 years.
And do you have any special training to accomplish your job duties?
So first I have a bachelor's of science in biological science with a minor in chemistry and a specialization in forensic science. And then once I was employed with Idaho State Police, I went through an extensive training program, which included practical exercises, readings, tests, and some external training and different training classes outside of the laboratory.
And are you a member of any professional organizations related to your job?
Yes, I'm a member of the International Association for Identification, as well as their Pacific Northwest Division.
You mentioned earlier that you process latent prints. What are latent prints?
So latent print means a impression that's left unintentionally. So I may touch this desk here and I may be able to leave an impression behind. Generally, these impressions aren't easy to see. They need to be enhanced or processed in some way to be able to visualize them.
And what is the process used to develop a latent print for purposes of your examination?
It really depends on the item. So when I receive an item into the laboratory, I'm first looking at the item to try to decide which methods I'm going to use. The first thing I'm looking at is the item porous or non-porous? Meaning porous, like paper, absorbs water, and non-porous obviously repels water, like a water bottle, piece of plastic, things like that. And then once I've determined that, I may look at the color of the item or the texture of the item, and these things may help me decide which process I'm going to use. Mainly, though, depending upon whether it's porous or non-porous.
And when people touch something, do they always leave a latent print?
No, it depends on a lot of different factors. They can be broken down into little categories. So the first being pre-touch, like meaning the person. So some people leave really good prints behind. Really depends on how much they sweat. Maybe if they touch their other parts of their face or their body a lot, they'll have oil on their hands. So those are person factors. Those are before you touch the item. And then you have touch factors, meaning if you touch an item, how likely is it you're going to leave something behind? And that depends a lot on the item itself. Is the item dirty? Is it dusty? Is it textured? Those kinds of things would mean that you probably wouldn't leave a latent print behind very easily. And then the post-touch factors, meaning is the item left outside a lot? Is it raining? Is the print going to be evaporated by the sun? And then how the item is packaged. So there's a variety of factors to determine whether or not a latent print is left behind.
If a latent print is left behind, how is it that you would collect a latent print?
So again, it really depends on the item. Let's say, for instance, I have just a normal piece of plastic. It's non-porous item. There's just plain old plastic. So in that case, I first do a visual examination, and I'm looking here to see first if I see any prints that someone may have left just incidentally. Maybe they have some oil on their hands. So maybe they have more skin cells on their hands and they've just left a print. So I'm first looking for that. I'm also looking at the item to see if there's any other forensic evidence that might be important. Like, are there hairs on the item? Is there a lint on the item? And those things I'm collecting at that point. Then I move on to a different visual examination where I'm using different colors of light to try to see if I can see any prints that may be fluorescing. If you touch other things and then touch an item, you could leave a print behind that is fluorescent. Makeup, for instance, is fluorescent. So I'm looking to see if I see any of those kinds of prints. After that, I move on to super glue fuming. It's very similar to what you may have seen on CSI. It's super glue. It goes in a chamber, and the chamber controls the heat and the humidity. And basically, the super glue just comes into the air and attaches to any moisture on the item. And because latent prints are made of a lot of water, it will attach the latent prints. And this is helpful because the glue makes the prints more visible because it's white now, and it also makes them less likely to be wiped away. And then I move on to a dye stain, which stains the entire item, but will more adhere to those prints that I previously glued. And then lastly would be a powder, depending upon the type of item.
When you say powder, is that like the dusting?
Yeah, so it's usually black powder, but it's with a brush.
And if any of those processes work and you're able to develop a latent print, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the correct terminology, develop the print or?
Yeah, develop a
print,
print,
okay.
yep.
How do you go about comparing it to another print or a person?
First, if I see any prints during any of those steps, I'm preserving them at each step that I see the prints. And then at that point, once the processing is done, then it either moves to myself or another analyst to do comparison, what we call it, comparison process. So that process is kind of a long acronym, but it's ACE-V, which is ACE-V. So the A stands for analysis. So I'm looking at the print to determine, do I know where this print came from? Meaning, is it from a palm? Is it from a finger? Is it from the side of a finger? Do I know the location of the print? And then I also look at any kind of distortion. Every print you leave behind, you're making some type of distortion. So I'm looking at, do I see smears? Do I see voids in the print? Things like that. And then once I analyze the print and I say, yep, this print looks good, I'm gonna move it on to comparison, then I can pull generally fingerprint cards from the persons involved that the agency has let us know about. And then I do a back and forth comparison between an unknown and a known. Unknown, again, being the latent print. And I'm doing a back and forth comparison to see if the features I saw previously in my analysis phase, are they there in the known print? And not just are they there, but do they look similar to each other? Is their spacing the same? Things like that. And then the E stands for evaluation. So at that point, I'm saying, okay, I've done my comparison. What's my answer? Is this print from this source of this known or not from the source? Are they the same source? And then at that point, I'll make my determination. And then V stands for verification, where another analyst goes through and does the whole thing over again.
And so just to kind of summarize that, you look at the print, determine if it's sufficient to make a comparison.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then you attempt to make the comparison.
Yes.
You evaluate that and then have it verified by someone else.
Yes.
And you mentioned that, how do you compare it to someone else? You mentioned a print card?
So known prints are taken from people for various reasons. And so there is a database of known prints that I can access. So if I know who the agency would like this compared against, I know the persons involved, the victims, et cetera, then I'll pull cards from that database and be able to compare against them.
And do you ever sometimes go out and get prints from an individual so that you'll have something to compare your latent print with?
Yes, sometimes the record isn't very good, like the fingerprint card that was previously taken is of poor quality, or maybe I need areas of skin that weren't recorded, things like that. And we'll go out and take prints from known individuals for that reason.
Are you familiar with, for the year 2020, lab number 2233?
Yes.
what is that lab number associated with?
It is the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case.
All right. And did that involve JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan as well?
Yes.
What was your first contact with that lab number?
My first contact was taking prints at the coroner's office. I assisted Rexburg Police Department with that.
And what did you do at the coroner's office?
I took known prints from the victim, JJ.
And did you have any other contact with that case?
Yes, I did some processing of that, of different items that were submitted in this case. And then I also took known prints of two other people, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
All right. And did you collect any other samples from them besides known prints?
Yes, I also took buccal swabs. That's a swab to obtain cheek cells and saliva in the mouth for DNA.
And did you collect any hair samples?
Yes, I also did that.
Did you obtain any known samples for an Alex Cox?
Yes.
What were those?
I got two different samples. One was a standard fingerprint card where you're recording all 10 fingers. That was from the Federal Bureau of Investigation database. Like I said, you can be in there for a variety of reasons. And then the second cards I received were from the Gilbert Police Department that they submitted to me.
And the Gilbert Police Department, do you know why they had his fingerprints?
They said they were from his autopsy.
Did you do, referring to this lab number, did you do any actual latent print examinations?
Yes.
And can you tell us what items you did that on?
So I checked out and processed items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 18.
And did you process those items to search for prints?
Yes.
Okay, so let's, do you recall what item 10 was?
Yes. Item 10 was a white drawstring bag, like a trash bag, with gray colored pieces of duct tape attached to it. And per the agency, that was the bag around the head of JJ.
Were you able to develop any prints on that bag?
No.
Next was, I believe, item 11.
Yes.
What was that?
Item 11 was a mass of plastic and gray colored pieces of duct tape said to be plastic and body bag JJ.
And without getting into the specifics of that, were you able to develop any latent prints on that item?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll come back to
Yeah.
that in a minute. I believe the next item was 12.
12.
What was that?
12 was one piece of gray colored duct tape, and that was reported to be from the mouth of JJ.
And were you able to process any prints on that?
I did not get any prints on that, no.
Okay. And item 13?
Item 13 was one mass of gray colored duct tape, and that was said to be from the ankles of JJ.
Were you able to develop any prints there?
Yes.
And item 14?
Also one mass of gray colored duct tape said to be from the hands of JJ.
And I believe the last item, was it 18?
18, yes.
And what was that?
One green colored piece of plastic with Litica Corporation written on it, and it was said to be a green bucket from bag 2 of 3 from Tylee.
And were you able to develop any prints from that?
No.
From any of those items, were you able to collect any hairs?
Yes.
Where were you able to collect hairs?
Items 10, 11, 13, and 14.
And just briefly, let's talk about item 13. You said you were able to develop some prints from that.
Yes.
Were you able to do any successful comparison with those prints?
I did comparison. I don't know the word successful is, I'm not sure. But
Okay.
let me explain. So I was able to develop 2 latent prints from item 13. Those were 13.1 and 13.2. And 13.2 was established, once it was in the comparison phase, it was established that it was not enough ridge detail for comparison. So at that point, there's nothing further to do. There's no comparison to be made. Whereas 13.1 was enough to compare and moved on to the comparison stage, but no identifications or exclusions could be made. So the print became inconclusive, and that was due to the quality of the latent print. So sometimes there's enough detail that you can do some comparison, but you may not be able to render a conclusion of identification or exclusion, and to kind of just get stuck in the middle.
So inconclusive is maybe the better word than
Yeah.
successful or unsuccessful.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'd like to talk to you about item 11. And if you can just briefly remind the jury what item 11 was.
Yes, item 11 is black colored plastic and gray duct type tape. The item itself is composed of multiple pieces, so I labeled them separately. So 11.1 to 11.11 is the gray colored duct type tape, and then 11.12 to 11.15 is the plastic pieces.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be handed what's been marked as State's Exhibit 210, and I do have a courtesy copy for counsel and the court. Ms. Martinez, are you familiar with Exhibit 210?
Yes,
When you, in anticipation of testifying before the jury today, did you prepare this exhibit?
yes.
And what does that exhibit purport to be? Or what is the information contained in that exhibit? Let me ask that.
This contains the items broken down so that you can see photos of each of the items, as well as photos of each of the latent prints that were compared. And it includes what we call our charts, which is basically like my markup of the prints.
And Your Honor, I believe that this comes in by way of stipulation. But I would ask this exhibit, or let me ask a couple more questions. Did you prepare that in anticipation of testifying before a jury?
Yes,
And do you believe that that would help the jury understand both the work you did and the results you found
yes.
on this case? Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit 210 be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
Judge, it's entered by way of stipulation of the parties.
All right, then 210 is admitted, states 210.
And if I may publish, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
Ms. Martinez, did this originate as a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes,
That's the software you used to create this?
yes.
And Your Honor, I'll be just publishing through the Elmo.
Okay.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at on this page of the exhibit?
Yes, so on the left, you can see underneath it says item 11. So there's two different areas, I guess, of plastic on this photo. So the one on the left is what was processed, and the one on the right is what the one on the left came in. So it came in as this giant bag with bags inside. So the one on the right was not processed. And then on the right photo, where it says item 11.12, this is just 11.12, so being one of the pieces of plastic that was in that bundle. And then if you look at the top right there, you can see it says 11.12.1. So that's just an indication of where the latent print was on that item.
And if you can explain to the jury what they're seeing on the second page.
So this is just item 11.15. So just this piece of plastic, just this little guy here is 11.15. And you can see there that I have marked 11.15.1, which is where the latent print 11.15.1 was located on the item.
If you can tell the jury what they're looking at here.
So this is latent print 11.12.1. This is it developed. So this is the way the photo, this is the exact photo that I took at the time when I developed the print.
And what are they seeing here?
And this is the same photo, but I enhanced it. So I took it into Photoshop and I made some changes to make it black and white instead of it being that yellow color, and up the contrast. So it's the same picture, it's just adjusted. And this is the analysis of the lane print. So I mentioned the charts earlier when I'm marking up the print, and analysis being the A of the methodology. So you can see here, there's a bunch of different dots on the screen, these yellows and these greens here. So those represent what I'm seeing. If the dot is green, I'm very confident at what I'm seeing. If the dot is yellow, I'm less confident, meaning I see features there. I just may not be sure what kind of feature it is, or maybe not exactly sure on the location. So this is my markup of the print. And then this is the comparison charting, as I said, the C in the methodology. So on the left, you have the latent print, and on the right, you have the known print. And this is my back and forth comparison between the two. You can see the dots that are blue, and then I numbered them for court reasons to correspond, so you can see the correspondence between the two.
All right, and I see it says comparison of latent print 11.12.1 to known print number 5 Cox. Is that referring to Alex Cox?
Yes, the conclusion at the end of this comparison was an identification to the card bearing the name Alexander Cox to number 5, meaning the right little finger.
And again, when it says item 11, it's referring to the black plastic that JJ's body was found in.
Yes. So this is the other latent print that was developed, 11.15.1. Again, this is the photo that was taken at the time when it was processed with the dye stain. And this is the same photo, but obviously enhanced, changed to black and white.
And is that, can you tell what body part that print is from?
In my analysis, I believe that I wrote that it was likely a palm. That is based on the flow I'm looking at here. You can also see that's much larger than the finger we just looked at. There's also some creases here and some other indicators that it's likely from a palm print.
And what's the jury seeing?
And this is, again, close up, and this is my analysis chart. So you can see here, there's some greens and some yellows marking up this print. So this is what my analysis markup looked like. And then here's the comparison markup, again, in the blue dots. Those are the correspondence with the corresponding numbers. And the conclusion after the comparison was that 11.15.1 was identified to the right palm of the fingerprint card or the palm print card bearing the name Alexander Cox.
So just to be clear, this comparison matched up with the print of Alex Cox.
Yes.
And again, this is from item 11. So part of the black plastic bags wrapped around
Yes.
JJ. Ms. Martinez, were you able to verify any other fingerprints from anyone else? Oops, I'm sorry. On any of those items?
I was not able to identify anyone else.
All right. And you mentioned that you collected some hairs.
Yes.
What did you do with those hairs?
I collected them using adhesive notes. So usually I use like something like a Post-it note. And I collected them and repackaged them in coin envelopes, and then they were returned with the item inside the item's original packaging.
And was that for other people to do different types of analysis?
Yes, I don't do hair analysis. So anything that I see that could be used for somebody else may want, like hair, lint, fibers, things like that, I will collect and save.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Right. All right, Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Judge, before we start, I have Defense Exhibit 41 I'd like to have marked. And my understanding is that it's by stipulation of the parties.
Oh, yes.
All right, can you explain what Exhibit 41 is, please?
That would be part of the report that Ms. Martinez prepared as part of this investigation.
Very well. If that's being offered, I'll just take that up at this time. Is the state been able to review Exhibit 41?
Yes, Your Honor, we have no objection.
Very well. Defense Exhibit 41 is admitted.
Judge, may I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez, would it be fair to say that plastic is a good conduit to obtain fingerprints?
Yes,
It's because of the nature of how plastic is manufactured. It has an oil-based production, which would allow for fingerprints to be easily placed upon that kind of a surface. Would that be fair?
Yes, it's a very good surface for laying prints, mostly just because it's non-porous and it does have a nice coating on it.
And in this particular case, you were clearly able to identify a fingerprint of Alex Cox. Is that right?
Yes,
And the bottom of the heel of the hand of Alex Cox on this plastic. Is that right?
it wasn't the bottom, but yes, a piece of the palm, yes.
The piece of the palm of Alex
Yes,
Cox.
under the two fingers right here, the middle finger and the ring finger, so higher up in the hand.
Okay. And then I don't know if I saw this in your report. You collected hairs in your process of going through all of the plastic that you were provided. Is that right?
Yes,
Do you have a recollection of how many hairs you collected as a result of your analysis?
I'd have to look at my notes. It's written down in my notes, but it's not something that was reported at the time.
Do you have your notes with you?
Yes,
Are they at the table with counsel?
yep.
Mr. Bailiff, could you provide the witness? And Judge, could she use those to refresh her recollection?
Yes, I'll have her identify them once they're there. Thank you. Mr. Bailiff, if you wouldn't mind, please hand those to the witness, and these are notes for you to refresh your recollection, but don't read directly from them or read them into the record unless the court allows you to do that.
Just to clarify, sir, just item 11 hairs, is that what you would like?
All of the hairs that were located on all of the plastic that was submitted to you,
All of the plastic, okay.
all of the plastic.
My apologies, I have horrible allergies today.
And again, do you have a recollection of, after refreshing your recollection, do you recall how many hairs you sent off to the laboratory?
It's hard to say exactly how many because I collected them kind of as bundles and not every hair was collected individually.
Okay.
But it looks like about 50 different adhesive notes were used to collect them. And that's between items 10, 11, 13, and 14.
Okay. So there were a significant number of hairs that were located on the,
Yes, on all the plastic that was submitted.
and those hairs were sent off to Bode Laboratory, is that right?
I don't know where the hairs went. I just repackaged them.
Now, at any time, did you find all of those hairs on the first run through, or was that over a process of time that you were examining the plastic?
It looks like over a process of time. So some of them were right away during the first visual, and then others were seen after multiple processes.
And after multiple processes, you were able to identify these two latent prints of Alex Cox. Is that correct?
Yes,
And obviously, you've already noted that you are not, it's not within your department to deal with the latent prints. Is that right?
it's within my department to deal with the latent prints. I do latent prints.
I'm not.
Do you
I'm
mean
sorry.
DNA?
DNA.
Okay.
I am so sorry.
No problem. Yeah, no, I don't do anything with DNA.
And I don't have allergies, so I don't have an excuse. Other than Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox, were you at any time by law enforcement asked to do any analysis of any other people, to do a comparison of any other prints?
No, I was asked to just do the comparisons for the people that were involved. So JJ, Lori, and Chad were the only people that I compared against.
Okay. And law enforcement determined who were involved in this. Is that right?
Yes, and that's pretty standard. We don't know their investigation, so they let us know who they would like us to look at.
They set the criteria as to who you want to have hairs and prints tested against. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pryor. Redirect, Mr. Wood?
Your Honor, the state has no redirect.
All right, Ms. Martinez, and that will conclude your testimony. Does the state intend to keep her under subpoena or recall her?
Your Honor, I believe she can be released from her subpoena.
From the defense?
Judge, I'm sorry, I didn't hear Mr. Wood's response.
The state would allow her to be released from a subpoena and not recall her as the defense.
And Judge, I'm sorry, I also subpoenaed Ms. Martinez, and I'm going to release her today as well from the subpoena I had served upon her.
Okay, thank you. So that will conclude your testimony. Thank you for appearing this
Thank you.
afternoon, and you can go ahead and step down.